Hello, hi, and thanks for stopping by. Welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Tafara, and in today's video, we're rounding out 2022 by talking about all the books that I read this year. So we're talking the good, the bad, and the absolutely horrendous. In 2022, I made the humble goal of reading 22 books. Yeah, I read 15 books this year, which if you think about it, 15 out of 22, more than half, perfectly fine. And if you ask any university student, they will tell you more than half is perfectly okay. TBH, 15 out of 22 is 10 times better than 0 out of 22. So at the end of the day, I still read a ton of books, and we're going to talk about them all today. I split this video into 3 categories. That way we can have a bit of structure and break it up a little bit. So category 1, we're going to start with the average books, or the books that fall in the middle of the pack. These are the 3-star reads to the 4-star reads. And you might be thinking, oh, 4-star reads are such good books. And yes, they are, but they're not the best books. That's why they fall in the middle of the pack. Category 2, we have the horrendous, the worst books. So these are the books that I rated less than 3 stars. Hopefully there are not too many of them. The last category, or category 3, is the amazing books, the good books. These are the books that I rated higher than 4 stars. So we're going to end the video on a high note. It's New Year's. We need to end on a good, positive note. So those are the 3 categories we're going to follow today. Before we get started, I would encourage you to subscribe and turn on post notifications and set the notifications to all. That way you get notified every single time I post a new book video. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first book that we're going to be talking about is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. And just to premise, I read 3 Colleen Hoover books this year. Honestly, I think I was looking for that spark, the one that makes all the TikTok people love her books. But I read 3 books in and I didn't find it, so I think it's time to end the search. I've also heard that there's some problematic things in some of the books that are popular on TikTok, and I don't think I'll be reading any more Colleen Hoover books in the new year. I don't know, I guess we'll see. Back to All Your Perfect. It is the story of Quinn and Graham, and it is told in dual timeline to explore their relationship. So the past timeline explores how the relationship began, and then the now timeline explores the current stage of the relationship where they're married and they're trying to have children. The premise of the book that drew me to it in the first place was the circumstances in which they met. Quinn and Graham meet one fateful night when they realize that their partners are cheating on them. So Quinn's fiance at the time and Graham's girlfriend at the time were cheating on Quinn and Graham with each other. They sat outside the apartment of the ex-fiance, I think his name was Ethan, and ate Chinese food that the 2 cheaters ordered. It was kind of an interesting meet cute. They met on that night and then separated and then met again a few months later, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought it was going to be a love story with like quirky adventures, but boy was I wrong. In the now part of the timeline, they're married, and unfortunately, they're struggling with infertility and miscarriages. I want to put a trigger warning here in case this is a sensitive topic for anyone. I don't want to diminish their struggles or anyone else's struggles. Honestly, I sympathize with them. However, the book was boring, especially the past timeline. It only picked up towards the end of the book, but the rest of it was boring. And the now timeline was somewhat interesting, but then I felt like the characters were childish, and not in a cute way, because I feel like you can write childish characters, but it's like cute. I also don't want to be too critical, because even though they're fictional characters, they're obviously going through something that is difficult. The characters were annoying. They would not just talk to each other, they would not communicate, but it wasn't like the most horrendous book that I've ever read. Another note that I made was Colleen Hoover likes to use dual timelines. I haven't read all her books, so I can't say it applies to all her books, but I feel like it didn't need the dual timeline if she only picked one and focused on that one. So if it's the past timeline, focusing on the relationship and how it began, or focusing on the now timeline, it would have been more interesting if it was just one and not both. I mean, obviously it was to show contrast between the 2 and how the state of the relationship then versus now, and how people can seem so right for each other, and yet life throws all these curveballs that makes you see that life isn't all happily ever after. And that's not diminishing from the seriousness of the issues that are being discussed in the book. So at the end of it, it was not the best book that I've ever read. It wasn't the worst book that I've ever read. So I just rated it 3 stars. The next book that we're going to be discussing is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. In this body of work, the author takes us into a deep dive of the beauty standards in South Korea by magnifying the lives of 4 characters, inclusive of another character who is more of a secondary character, but she is so prominent that she feels like a 5th main character. She actually interweaves 2 of our main characters. The story is told in the point of view of the 4 main characters, so it alternates between the 4 of them, and I'm going to put their names up here because I do not want to butcher them and say them wrong. In this book, we also explore issues of poverty and a variety of things, which include like the beauty standards as well as traditions and ways of thinking that are passed down from generation to generation, as well as the effect on the lives of people. It's a slice of life type of book, and it definitely portrays how things that are sown into our society affect our way of thinking and the way we live and the way we interact with others. I feel like it sparks an interesting conversation about beauty standards and how it affects the lives of women and girls, not just in South Korea, but in the world as a whole. A recurring topic in the book is plastic surgery and how the characters want to get it, some have had it. It shines a light on how plastic surgery or like keeping up with these beauty standards is like this insatiable thing. One day the trend is this, you want to keep up with that, and so on. I feel like it would be a good read to discuss in like a book club where you can all share different opinions and stuff. As a student who did English literature in high school, this would have been an interesting book to read, to write essays and exams on. You can definitely analyze the themes of the book as well as the characters. Each of the characters is so different, and yet their lives intertwine in such interesting ways. I definitely enjoyed this book. It was on the good side of average, and so I rated it 3.5 stars. Book number 3 that's sitting in the middle of the pack is Spoiler Alert by Olivia Day. If you remember, I talked about this book in the July book wrap-up video, which I will link in the cards up here or up there. It's probably going to be up here, I think. This book follows the premise of your favorite actor or your favorite celebrity asking you out as a fan on a date. The book follows Marcus, who is a famous actor. He acts in this show based off of a book, and he asks out April, who is a fan that was trending on Twitter after she posted a picture of her cosplaying. The two also write fan fiction. It's set in the world of fan fiction, although Marcus does it in secret because it's basically a breach of his contract for being on the show and he could get fired for that. April also does it in secret. She hides it from her co-workers and her real life, essentially. This book took me quite a while to read because of the amount of spice it has, and this offered more spice than... But then at the end of the day, that's just my preference. I also really loved the fact that I was reading about a plus-size main character and one that is dyslexic. I've never read a book about a character who is dyslexic before, so that was interesting. I don't know if it was an accurate representation of that, so I will have to do some research and see. It was interesting to read about characters who had something that is a part of their lives other than just being attractive. I rated this book 3.75 stars, and I already talked about the book in the July wrap-up video, and you can check that out if you want to know more about my thoughts, but I did reiterate them here because we're talking about the book here as well. Moving along into the larger chunk of the middle of the pack books, we're talking about the 4-star reads now. So these books are more on the better end of the spectrum and lean more towards being good books. Like, I finished reading them and I thought, that was a good book. Like, I enjoyed that book. It leaves you feeling satisfied. So the first 4-star book we're going to be talking about is One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. The best way to describe it is like taking The Breakfast Club and then adding a thriller / murder mystery in there. The book explores 5 characters. So 5 of these characters walk into detention and only 4 of them leave. So we have Cooper, who is the jock, Bronwyn, who is the valedictorian candidate, she's Yale bound, and then we have Addie, who is the prom princess, she's the popular girl, she has blonde hair. I know that's like a distinguishing factor for her in the book, is that she has blonde hair. And then we have Nate, the troublemaker, you know, the one that always wears black in these types of situations. And the 5th character is Simon Kelleher. He runs this gossip website called About That reports gossip on anybody and everybody in school. The 5 of them walk into detention because they've had phones planted in their backpacks, and the one that doesn't leave is Simon, and Simon unfortunately passes away, and the novel follows this whirlwind of the investigation, like what happened, who could have done this. The police are on the case of the 4 students who were with him in detention, so they're the prime suspects. It was so interesting, like you could not see the plot twist coming. Like, I thought I had it, I did not have it. I don't want to include any spoilers to this book in case you want to read it yourself, and I definitely recommend reading it. I also want to check out the other books. It's like multiple books in a series, and I think you can read them as standalones. I'm not too sure. I really enjoyed it. Don't think I ever endeavored in reading mystery / thriller type books, but this one was really interesting. The next book is the second Colleen Hoover book, which is also one that I talked about in the July wrap-up video. It is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This book is quite unsettling and chilling. Some of the things in this book are dark. I had to stop reading in between just to process. So 10 out of 10 recommend reading the trigger warnings before you read this book, because it's not it's not for the faint-hearted, I tell ya. If you haven't read it before, it follows Lowen, who is a struggling author. She's on the brink of financial ruin, and she is hired by Jeremy, the husband of Verity Crawford, a very famous author who recently got into a car accident and is unable to finish a series of successful books that she was in the process of writing. So Lowen is hired to write the books, and so she goes over to Verity and Jeremy's house to go into her office and just read a few of the notes that she has, the research that she's done, and get a feel of the previous books and her writing style. That way she can see a way forward to continue the books. From the get-go, there is chemistry between Lowen and Jeremy, and they end up falling in love while Verity is in the house. And it's so weird because Jeremy is still married to Verity. They're not divorced or anything. It was a really weird thing to be having chemistry with someone who is married already, but I guess that's supposed to be what makes the story more dramatic or whatever. Lowen finds a manuscript while going through Verity's notes and stuff, and in the manuscript, that's where the gruesome stuff is found. So by the end of it, you're unsure whether to trust the manuscript or a letter that Verity writes to Jeremy, negating all that's in the manuscript. However, I have seen that the manuscript is the more accurate one than the letter, which was the last chance thing thrown in there. So I guess the manuscript was the true one after all. I think it was an okay book. I say okay cautiously because it was so weird and so gruesome, but the plot twist in the book couldn't get past me though. I'm so good at predicting plot twists and determining what they are, so if a movie or a book can get a plot twist past me, then I consider it a really good book. Not to toot my own horn or anything. The next audiowork that we'll be talking about today strays away from the typical line of books that I've been talking about before because it is a poetry collection called The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur. It is a poetry collection that follows a range of topics including love, falling in love, heartbreak, relationships, as well as family, to name a few. It also has a few illustrations in there to really drive home some of the topics and the words that are being expressed. It was quite emotive and simple to understand. It can appeal to a wide range of readers, especially if you're new and haven't read poetry before. I feel like it's a good way to start. Is that an insult? I hope not. Some of the poems were not exactly the most revolutionary thing in the world. It's not revolutionary ideas that you've never heard before, but at the same time, it was still emotive and it adds to the overall feeling of the collection. Moving along, we're talking about a romance book that I happened to read in February. I don't know if I did that on purpose or if it just happened that way. But the book is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. It is a slow burn romance book, which she's known for writing slow burn romance books. And I had never experienced slow burn until I read this book. And if you're unfamiliar with what that means, it's you're roasting something in the oven for 18 hours and it's slow roasting, and then it's gonna get to the point where it picks up. And then by the end, it should be all good, should be all cooked and delicious. It follows Vanessa and Aiden, where Aiden is a football player. He is originally from Canada, and Vanessa is his assistant. As luck would have it, his work visa is expiring and he wants to get a green card, and he needs to marry Vanessa to do that. It's sort of a grumpy ex-sunshine situation. It was a cute romance actually, except for the part where it's a slow burn and it takes forever to get to the cute parts, but I mean there's a few of them sprinkled in there, so it was pretty good. To round out the middle of the pack books as well as the 4-star books, we are going to talk about one that I actually finished recently, which is Charming as a Verb by Ben Philippe. It follows Haitian American. Henry is a high school student. He runs this dog walking business. It's a kind of a sus business, to be honest. And we find this out because of Corinne, our second main character, who is also a student who goes to his high school, and she lives above him in their building. And she finds out that this is not a legit website, and she blackmails him into helping him become more social and to befriend more people, because she was recently told that she's intense and that she isn't very good at socializing with other students. Also, this book explores college admissions and gearing up to go to college. They're going through the admissions process, waiting for responses, and that's one of the main reasons why Corinne enlists his help, because in her recommendation letter, she was said to be someone who isn't very good at socializing with other students, and so she wanted to change that so to increase her chances of getting into her dream school, which is Princeton. As I was reading this book, I couldn't help but think me a few years ago, who was fresh out of high school or just finishing high school and thinking about university admissions and going to university and like the pressures that you go through during that stage of life. I feel like me then would really appreciate this book because it's so relatable, and I definitely would recommend it if you're going through that stage of life. Even if you gone past that, I feel like you feel very seen by this book. This book also sparks discussion about the pressures that especially parents put on us as their children in terms of like university, what to study and stuff like that, because Henry in particular's dream school is Columbia University. It's all he's ever thought about, as well as his parents, like his dad especially. It's been their collective dream for him to go to Columbia University. Henry's dad puts a lot of pressure on him to go to Columbia University, and Henry has always wanted to go there. However, he is hit with the realization that there are better things out there for him, especially when he tanks an interview with one of the alumni from Columbia University. Like, it does not go well, and it takes the journey throughout the book for him to realize that maybe that's not where he's meant to be, especially towards the end where Corinne's mother is one of the deans at Columbia University, and so he takes matters into his own hands, uses her identity, and falsifies a recommendation letter. It definitely blows things over, and it also puts into perspective the pressures that his father has been putting on him that maybe he didn't realize he was putting on his son. And I feel like it holds true to a lot of students and what happens in the whole application process. This book could also be a conversation starter in terms of the way in which class and wealth affects the lives of the students, because Henry goes to a school where there are students who are wealthier than him. He is the child of immigrant parents, and it's told in his perspective, but you can see how he views life and how he thinks about his wealthier counterparts and how he feels he doesn't have the same opportunities as them, especially in the college admissions space. Also, an important character in the book is Henry's smile, because as the book title suggests, charming as a verb, he is charming. No one can withstand his charms except Corinne. But it also made a point of how he has learned to charm people, and with that comes lying and manipulation. And his smile, he has different forms of this smile for different occasions, for different situations, for different people, and it leads to him mastering the art of telling people or showing people what they want to see or what they want to hear. 10 out of 10 recommend, and it was a good book. So that's the last book to round off the 4-star section. Moving swiftly along, we are moving on to the horrendous books now. So the books that I rated less than 3 stars this year. The first book that we're going to talk about in this section is The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. If I were to use 2 words to describe this book, it was boring and basic. Let me tell you a little bit about it. The book follows our 2 main characters, Bree and Nathan, and it's a friends to lovers story, so they've been best friends for the longest time, and they're both secretly in love with each other. They haven't told each other that they're in love with one another. I think there's a fake dating trope thrown in there at some point in the book. Honestly, this book was so basic. It was like the most basic romance like you could ever think of. The book was tagged as funny. I did not find it funny at all. I think it was like one joke that I laughed at, and that was it. Like, it was boring. Sometimes I think maybe I'm the problem, because I know a lot of people enjoyed this book and really like it, but personally it's not for me. And it reminded me why I don't gravitate to it. You know those cookie cutter basic romance movies, you know, the typical ones with the same exact plot in every single one of them, but with something slightly different about it. Romance movies about the small town girl, she has this business. In the next movie it's the same thing, but it's the same thing. Like, no, dude, I cannot be watching the same thing. And this book was like watching one of those movies. Okay, I can't handle that. No, thank you. Like, I need something interesting. I need drama, something, you know, to keep me hooked. Honestly, I would have rated it 1 star, but there were some cute, salvageable moments in there. So I gave it a 2.75 stars. The last book in this category, which thank goodness, because it means there are only 2 horrendous books this year, is Viral by Helen Fitzgerald. Don't even get me started on this book. I did not like this book in the very least. Okay, the premise sounds interesting. So Viral, the title, stems from the fact that this girl, she is adopted. She goes on a vacation to Spain with her sister and 2 of the sister's friends. They get drunk and have one wild night, and she goes viral for doing some pretty wild things. This comes so out of left field because she is supposed to be the quote-unquote perfect daughter. She's the one who's obedient, has the good grades, follows the rules, etc, etc. Due to this fact that she's gone viral, she goes into hiding in Spain, and she has this inner turmoil. It's like, how do I go back home and face my parents and face society? Her adoptive mother back in Scotland is a high-ranking judge, so this doesn't play well on her reputation. And she was meant to go to a top university, and because of the scandal that's broke out, the university doesn't want her anymore, so her life is basically in shambles. And her parents, all they wanted for her to come home. Her mother chooses to look for her and to try and plead with her to come home, and they want to exact revenge and get justice for her at the same time from the men who recorded her doing the wild things and posted it online. It was told in dual POV, in Ruth's POV, the mother, and Sue's POV, the main character, or the girl who went viral for the wrong reasons. For a premise, it sounds pretty good, right? Wrong. This book went 12 million directions. There were so many different plot threads that it made no sense. If it had focused on a few of them, it would have been a successful book in telling the story that it was trying to tell. And it took me forever to finish the book because it was difficult to get through. Besides the plot making no sense, the characters were awful as well. Like, every single character except the father was horrendous. They were horrible people. The sister, who is the biological child of the parents, she did not like her sister. She hated her. She did all these things because she hated her. But she did have, dare I say, good character arc, because by the end of it, she realizes her mistake and feels remorseful and guilty, and she patches up the relationship with her sister. The main character, Sue, wasn't that great either. And I think the worst character of all was the mother. Her name was Ruth. She wanted to exact revenge on the people who took the video and posted it, and she engages in all sorts of things just to try and exact revenge. At some point, she forgets that she's trying to exact revenge, and it completely veers off into something else. Unfortunately, the dad passes away, and they don't even mourn him. They mourn him for like 2 seconds. I bet you it was like 2 paragraphs or 2 lines even, and then they move on, and that's it. And they go back to the revenge plot. It was doing so many things at once. Like, you would be here all day if I were to describe it to you, and it would still not make sense. And then there was the ending. It didn't even resolve anything, because how can you resolve if you have 12 million different plot points? So I've not liked this book, not even in the slightest. And you know that TikTok sound that goes, it's so bad I want to give you a 0, but I can't, so I give you a 1. That's exactly what applies here, except I gave this book a 0.75, and that's as high as I was gonna go. That was the worst book that I read in 2022. To end things off on a high note for this video, we're going to change the trajectory and start talking about the good books. So these are the best books that I read this year. So tier 3, we've made it this far. Congratulations. These are the books that I rated higher than 4 stars, so the ones that I enjoyed the most this year. So the first one is the last Colleen Hoover book. This one is one of her least popular books, and it's Regretting You. It was actually the first Colleen Hoover book that I actually read, and it was a pretty decent book, and I talked about it more in depth in my July book wrap-up video. But to summarize, it follows Morgan and her 16-year-old daughter Clara. It is a dual point of view book, which continues the trend of Colleen Hoover books to have 2 of something. Basically, 2 timelines or 2 points of view are so similar that they often clash, and the only thing that seems to hold them together is Chris, which is Morgan's husband and Clara's dad. And Morgan and Chris are high school sweethearts So they've been together for a long time, and unfortunately he passes away in a car accident, and the book explores the aftermath of that. They also lose Jenny, which is Morgan's sister. Spoiler alert, they were in the car together, Chris and Jenny in the car together. This was a book that I honestly couldn't put down, and it had a few funny lines actually. In the 2 points of view, the main quest of the characters is how they're dealing with the grief as well as their relationship with each other, and it explores mother-daughter relationships. The side quest is romance, and Morgan has a second chance romance while Clara is exploring her first romance. And I really enjoyed the book actually. Although I did like more of Morgan's story more than I did Clara's story, I think I would have enjoyed the book more if it was just Morgan's point of view. In terms of like the romance, this was the best one out of the 3 books that I read. I rated it 4.75 stars. The second book that almost made it is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle. It is the story of Naomi and Nicholas. It is essentially a second chance romance where the two of them are engaged and then they've fallen out of love, and the story focuses on them falling back in love with each other. The main antagonist of the story is Nicholas's mother, who has been pressing down their necks about how she wants the wedding to be, and more often than not she has something not so nice to say about Naomi. That is one of the problems that they have to work through, that he never defends her from his mother. I love this book with my whole heart. I love the banter, I love the characters, and in some of the reviews that I read, people think that the characters are quite childish. I mean, I agree, but then I liked it at the same time. They're trying to get each other to break off the engagement, so they pull pranks on each other, they have banter. It's so good, and I highly recommend it. The only thing that knocked off some points for me is the ending. In the end, the two of them fall back in love, obviously, and then decide to elope. That way they can have the wedding on their own terms. And don't get me wrong, I really loved that for them. I enjoyed it. I thought it was so cute, so sweet. However, the main antagonist falls off from the story at some point, and I know she's like not the main focus of the story, but I feel like it would have benefited from Nicholas's mother's reaction to them eloping and her going berserk or something. The ending just didn't feel complete to me, but other than that, everything else was chef's kiss. I love the book so much. One of my favorites. Definitely one of my favorite romance books. That's why I rated it 4.75 stars. Time for the 5-star books. The creme de la creme. The very best. The ones that won my heart this year. And the first one that we're going to talk about is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazel. I will admit, some of the stuff is actually quite questionable, but I loved it. And if you haven't read it yet, it is about Olive, who is a grad student, and it's a fake dating, grumpy ex-sunshine romance. She lies to her friends that she is over her ex-boyfriend and is seeing someone new, even though, like I said, she's lying. Her friend comes to see her while she's doing lab work, and she decides to kiss a professor. He was the first person that she saw, and she just decided to kiss them out of nowhere. And they decide to fake date. That way Olive can continue lying to her friends, and that way Adam can get a grant so he can do certain work that he wants to do. And a constant thing in this book is he always threatens to report her for harassment. But other than that, I think the book was quite funny. I enjoyed the humor. It was really funny, in my opinion. The second book under this category is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing this. I sound like a broken record, but I talked about it in my July wrap-up video, so you can check that out as well. It is the story of Evelyn Hugo. She is a famous Hollywood actress from the 50s and 60s, and she got married 7 times. She had 7 different husbands, and they all helped to further her story. She is the main character, no doubt about it. She's telling her entire story to a struggling author because of a interesting connection that they have between the two. She wants to help her out in her big break, and Evelyn knows that her time is coming. It's such a good book. Definitely recommend it. And also, it felt like a movie, and that's another thing that I enjoyed about it. It felt like you were watching a movie the way it unfolds, and I thought that was so interesting. And I feel like you could make a good TV show with 7 or so episodes to represent each husband. But it is also not about the husbands at the end of the day. It's her story, and she tells it so well. Each of these people were just like pieces in her story, but not in like a completely malicious way. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Last but not least, the best of the best, my all-time favorite book of 2022 is The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams. I can't begin to explain how much I love this book. It is a romance book that focuses on Britta and Wes. Those are our two main characters. Britta is a journalist / writer for a wellness company, and then Wes is the owner of a fitness app. The story is set in motion when Britta and her co-worker are competing for the same position and so are working on the same project where they have to review fitness apps. Britta is reviewing one app and her co-worker is reviewing a different app. And at the end of the day, they will compare findings, and then whoever does a better job of amassing an audience, entertaining an audience, and being informative to an audience is going to get the promotion. With Wes's app, you get a personal trainer and then you can work through your fitness goals. And one of the core values of his company / app is that the customer feels comfortable and that they are not working towards toxic goals. And Wes is the CEO of the company, obviously, and doesn't work as a trainer, but he's been feeling a little demotivated, and so he does what he truly loves, which is the training work, and decides to get a client, which happens to be Britta. He doesn't know that she's writing and reviewing their app, and she doesn't know that he is actually the CEO of the company. And so they embark on a journey where he helps her with her fitness goals, and along the way, the romance sparks. Britta is also plus size, and it felt refreshing to read that her main focus wasn't to lose weight, and it wasn't that all the characters in the book made her feel like she had to. She was just like a normal person, and I felt like that was much appreciated. So refreshing. I overall enjoyed the book. Banter amazing, the writing amazing. I loved it so much. 10 out of 10 would recommend you read it. If I could rate this book 12 stars, I definitely would. The story wasn't a typical story, it had its own uniqueness to it as well. I definitely felt so sad when the book was over, and I would definitely love to read more works by this author. And so that wraps up all the books that I read this year. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. That way you get notified every single time I post a new video. Comment down below any future content ideas you'd like to see in the new year. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank you all for watching my videos in 2022, and I'm wishing you all a happy and prosperous new year. I can't wait to see you guys in 2023. Bye!